Hello, welcome or welcome back. My name is Arian. All month long this month, I am reading my TBR shelves. I am doing a Read Your Shelves challenge where I take a D6 at the start of every week, roll it, and then read the corresponding shelf with it, which means I have 6 TBR shelves in 4 weeks of reading. 2 shelves won't be read, but 4 of them will be. So the goal is to read as many books off of that shelf as I can fit into a week. At least 3, minimum of 3, but ideally I read more. So let's just jump right into the rolls. Apologies for the bad lighting, the shadows. It's kind of dark outside. So I need another book to read, so we're going with what I got. So, as you can see from last week, I have added like a key for which shelf is which. If I roll a 2, we're just going to re-roll. We're not going to get the same shelf twice in a month. As far as what I'm going for, I don't want shelf 1. I really don't want shelf 1. So anything but a 1 or I guess a 2. 4. 4 is book boxes 2022 or older. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Right down here is what we're working with. Again, apologies about the lighting. So 3 books to start us off with. 1 Dark Window is on my TBR for this month, so we're definitely reading that. And that is a fantasy, so let's grab a sci-fi and read Upgrade by Blake Crouch. This also takes care of the Book of the Month books, which you can see I got a handful of those down there. And then, so fantasy, sci-fi, let's get something that's neither fantasy nor sci-fi. I don't have a lot of those. I only have 3, apparently. In Cold Blood, The Goldfinch, and One by One, because this is sci-fi. It's like historical fiction, but it's also sci-fi. So let's read One by One, because The Goldfinch is thick, and I don't want to read that. So these are the 3. This is where we're starting with this shelf. Let's see how many I can actually get read this week. First book down, One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. I keep forgetting that these really pretty fairy loot books are like the start of series. Like, I don't want to be starting series. I just see pretty sprayed edges and then forget that this is a special edition first book of the series and not a standalone. So I've started another series. I have seen this book all over TikTok, all over people's TBRs, and kind of picked it up because I wanted to know, like, what's going on? What's all of this about? Now this, as many Fairy Loot editions are, is a fantasy romance, YA fantasy romance. This could lean a little bit more into adult. I'm not sure that the main character's age is given, but I imagined her in her mid-20s, though I'm sure she's probably like 17. In this world, magic is done through like a deck of cards, kind of like the 12 days of Christmas. There's 12 of a certain card, then 11, 10, 9, 8, all the way down to 1 single card. And use of those cards is how you are allowed to do magic in this world. In addition to those cards, there's like a mist that goes through the forest and a fever that rages in children. And if a child gets this fever, they are given magic, but that's bad magic, and any child who catches the fever needs to be killed. And if they're hidden and not just given up to the king to be killed, then their entire family is killed as well as they are once they're found out. Our main character is one of these children who has gotten a fever as a child and was hidden. She's made it, she's 20. It does say there in here somewhere that she is 20 years old. So she's made it to her 20s without dying and without being caught with this magic. And she kind of knows what her magic is, but it doesn't seem very useful. But eventually she has to use it, obviously, for the plot. This is very good as long as you like fantasy romance and you're okay with ignoring some like major issues. Mostly the main character is dumb. She's not exactly an intelligent being, so you got to ignore the fact that the main character is kind of stupid, and then you have to ignore like the problems with the society they live in, which I don't really want to get into what those problems are because it's kind of a spoiler. As long as you're good with just reading this for sheer pleasure and not looking too closely behind the scenes, and you enjoy fantasy romance, you're probably going to like this. I would say though, this ends on a huge cliffhanger, so I would wait until the second book comes out before reading this, unless you're good with cliffhangers. Some people are great with cliffhangers and just don't care. But if you're worried about like a really, really big cliffhanger, wait until the second book comes out. I think it comes out later this year, but just a heads up on that one. Overall, I give this 4 stars. I very much enjoyed my time with it, and I see why it's such a big buzz on TikTok and kind of agree with the buzz. Same day, much later. It's almost midnight, but I did finish One by One, and I wanted to talk about it before I went to bed and forgot everything I was going to say. First, I have a hate-hate relationship with mystery thrillers. I don't tend to like them because although I love an unlikable character or a character with gray morality, I find a lot of times in thrillers the characters are mostly morally bankrupt. Typically they're that way, so it's very easy to imagine most of the characters in a book being the killer. I don't like morally bankrupt characters or just awful people, so typically if that's the case, I tend to DNF the thriller fairly quickly. I have read one book by Ruth Ware before. I read Turn of the Key. Is it Lock Every Door or Turn of the Key? Oh god, I think it's Turn of the Key. I'll put the cover up here. And I did get through it. I thought it was fine, 3 stars. Ending was weird, whatever, it doesn't matter. But I knew from that book that I wouldn't instantly hate Ruth Ware's characters. Now going into this specific book, this was popular a while ago on BookTube, and I remember it was very divisive. Like people either absolutely love this or they passionately hated it. So what did I think? I think this is firmly 3 stars. Like it was enjoyable, a quick read. I enjoyed my time reading it, but it's not something that's going to stay with me for a long time. It's not something that really changes my overall experience or like or dislike of thrillers, but I didn't mind reading it at all. I don't really understand why people would hate this, but I obviously don't read a whole lot of mystery thrillers, so maybe this is like something that happens a lot. Maybe it's a ripoff of something else. I have absolutely no idea why this is so hated. Go to somebody else for that. But the story itself, so this takes place in the French Alps in a chateau. This company retreat is there for like a weekend of skiing and business and you know, things like that. And then there's an avalanche and they get trapped and people start dying. So that's the basic premise. It's told from the perspective of 2 different women. You have Erin and Liz. Erin is a like employee. She's like the concierge or the hostess of this chateau. It's like a private place with her and like a cook are the only staff there. And she kind of takes on the role as like a detective in this once people start dying. Like she's trying to figure out like what's happening, put everything together, protect the other people, etc., etc. And the other character is Liz, who is like a former employee of the company, but a shareholder, which is why she's there. And she's kind of like shy and mousy, and like people tend to just not pay attention to her. And that's kind of what you get from both sides of the story, is like Liz is ignored for who she is, just as a human being, and then Erin is ignored because she's staff, and that enables both of them to like overhear a bunch of different conversations that maybe they wouldn't have overheard as much if they weren't so forgettable and easily ignored, which I said like 5 times. So it kind of like goes through both of them solving this mystery and trying not to die. And then, you know, all the red herrings of it could be this person, it could be this person, it could be this person, etc., etc. That's pretty standard for a mystery thriller. I don't really want to say anything else more about it because we don't want to spoil any of this, but it was fine. As far as recommendations go, I wouldn't not recommend this to anybody, but I'm not exactly a great person to go to for mystery thriller recommendations. So if this sounds like something that you would like to read, I was in no way offended by this book. So in the not so distant future, a geneticist kills something like 200 million people when she accidentally destroys pretty much the entire world's food supplies. After the Great Starvation ends, genetic engineering is pretty much banned. It's illegal, and our main character, who is that geneticist's son, is basically an FBI agent who tracks down people doing any sort of genetic experiments. Early in the book, he is caught in a trap accident, something that causes his genes to be screwed with, and he basically turns into like Captain America, like superhuman strength, superhuman intelligence, like everything human about him becomes the best that it could possibly be, and then he goes on to save the world from there. The only thing that I really took away from this book is that extremely intelligent people are pricks, and they're very stupid for being supposedly so intelligent. This isn't really my type of book, and it didn't really feel like Blake Crouch's other books, which is why I think a lot of people who are big fans of Blake Crouch didn't particularly like this one. As far as recommendations go, this feels like Jason Bourne or Jack Ryan. So if you like those kind of books or shows and you want it a bit more sci-fi-y, I mean, Jason Bourne's pretty sci-fi, but this takes it a little bit further. You're down to read a bunch of math and formula. This may be for you. It wasn't for me, and I don't think I would recommend this to even people who like Blake Crouch and his other works, because this didn't feel like anything else I've read by Blake Crouch. So that's that off my shelf. I should have DNF'd this, but it read so fast that I just blew through it really quick. All right, and the first 3 books are done, and it's Wednesday, so I could definitely get some more books in. Let's head over to the bookshelf and pick out some more stuff to read. Apologies about the light again. It is pretty late at night. Okay, so this is what we have left on this shelf. In Cold Blood, don't really have any interest in reading. Sorry. In Cold Blood, I don't have any interest in reading. Goldfinch, way too thick for this. This one of the oldest books on my TBR, so definite possibility. This, I don't have any interest in reading right now. I don't know why. It doesn't speak to me. This one's nice and short. Definitely an option. This one is also one of the oldest on my TBR. This doesn't really speak to me. Hell no. Meh. This is another one that's very old on my TBR. And then this one, hello. That one I'm pretty sure I'm going to DNF. So what I think I am going to do is grab the two oldest first, and then we can come back to those three as I have extra time. All right, and in kindness of magicians, which it's white on white, so you can't really see this at all, can you? There you go. So every decade or so, the magical houses of the unseen world have to put up a champion to compete for house ranking, I believe. And some of the competitions are to the death. And this time around, there's something wrong with magic, and it's not working like it's supposed to. And that's the basic premise of this, which doesn't really tell you anything. The competition part, like, I scanned over it too fast, but that didn't make any sense to me. But that didn't, like, ruin the enjoyment of the book. Like, the book itself doesn't seem to have anything to do with that actual competition. If you've read this and you know why this competition happens better than I do, feel free to leave it in the comments, but it didn't really affect the book in and of itself. Now, as I said when I was picking this book, this is one of the oldest books on my TBR because I don't like books about magicians. I just haven't found one that I like, mostly because, like, illusion and stuff like that just doesn't do it for me. But this seems to be more what we would typically consider wizards instead of magicians. They're just using the author just uses the word magician, but it's more of like a wizard where you like cast a spell and something happens. Not illusion, though I guess they could do illusion magic. I'm gonna give this like a high 3 stars. I think there are way too many perspectives in this book, like far and beyond too many perspectives. There was at least 8 different perspectives, potentially more, but way too many perspectives. The story, the plot itself was good, very quick read. I enjoyed all of that. There's a character in here named Laurent. He is my favorite character of the year so far. He is just genuinely a good person. Just straight up, like, I have never been so sold on being like, wow, this is just a good human being as I was on the character Laurent in here. So, favorite character of the year, the book itself, okay, not great. But I'm glad I read it. It was much better than I expected it to be. And I'm ready to move on. The Dream Daughter by Diane Chamberlain. Another one of the older books on my TBR. I got this in like an advent calendar and then thought that I wasn't going to be interested in it because I don't typically like books about kids. Read like the first chapter and try a chapter tag. I think I might have done that twice. And then decided, oh wait, this does kind of sound interesting. There is a sci-fi element to it. Maybe I'll like it. This is about time travel, kind of. A woman in the 1970s is pregnant with her child and her husband has died in Vietnam. And of course this baby is the only thing she has left of him, but she finds out from the doctor that the baby has a heart defect and there's nothing that they can do about it. Like, the baby is going to die probably within days after it's born. Her brother-in-law is like, hey wait, I'm really a time traveler from 2018. I'm going to teach you how to time travel and send you back to 2001 so you can get this, or go to the hospital and get a surgery to help save this baby's life. Right? Why he's from 2018 and sends her back to 2001, I didn't get it. Like, I know why it happened. I still hated it, but I know why it happened, like, based off of what happens in this book. It's stupid. Reading the first few chapters, I was like, the writing is really good. And then I wanted to know how time travel works. And then when I found out how time travel works, I'm like, okay, this is dumb. This is not this is not good time travel science in here. And then from there, I kind of wanted to know, like, what happens to the baby? Just kind of vague curiosity. But I wasn't really into the book anymore at that point. And then I find out what happens to the baby, and I like lose all interest. I've lost all interest that I have in this book. But I'm like 200 pages in, and I'm over halfway through, and I'm like, I don't want to DNF it now. Because there's nothing wrong with the writing. I just didn't give a shit about the story anymore. But like I said, I'm already like well committed, so I might as well just finish the book and get credit for finishing it instead of DNFing it at that point. So I continue on, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. It's just bizarre. It is way too much like clingy mother thing going on. Like, I hated like the second half of this book. And then at the end, I was like, that's the conclusion? Oh, okay. But yeah, not good. I did not enjoy this story. If you really like stories of like mother-daughter relationships, like people like being really good parents, very much caring for their children, like to the detriment of everything else in their world. Maybe if you have kids, you would like this. Especially if you want like a little sci-fi twist to like a historical fiction. Sure, this would be good for you. If you just want sci-fi, would stay far away from this book. It is definitely not worth it. But yeah, I'm gonna give this a 2-star, but it's at least done. I've read it. I have a double update for you. First, All the Dangerous Things by Stacey Willingham. I noped out of this one pretty fast. This is not for me. It's a thriller about a woman whose son, like toddler son, was kidnapped from his bedroom, and she does like tours and speaking engagements at a bunch of like true crime conventions, because somehow that's gonna help her son come back. I don't know. I didn't get it. I do not care about other people's kids. I don't care about kids, period. I don't have my own kids to care about. I don't care about other people's kids. This was in no role for me. I actually, with thrillers that I DNF, I go ahead online and read like a summary, a spoiler-filled summary, and I'm very glad I DNF'd this after reading that summary, because that was like 1 page, and I was like, oh god, I couldn't read that. So this one's gone. I'm actually surprised that's my first DNF from this shelf, because this shelf is all books that were sent to me in book boxes. Like, I didn't pick any of these out for myself. Well, I guess the book of the month books I technically picked out for myself, but for the most part, I don't pick these books out for myself. The other one I have here is The Keeper of Night by Kylie Lee Baker. This one is not really what I expected from it. I picked it out. This one's an older one. What are we looking at? This is November of 2021. So one of the older books on my TBR. This is about a woman who is half English Reaper and half Japanese Shinigami. And she lives in England in ye olden days. I don't know exactly when this took place, but it was before electricity, and she's hated. She's a very good reaper, but because of her mixed heritage, everybody hates her. She's frequently bullied, abused, and she just has a miserable life. And so she decides to flee England and go become a Shinigami in Japan, and then has to go through some quest in order to be a quest task, whatever, in order to become a Shinigami. Shinigami? I can't say that. So that's basically what this book is like following those quests and everything, and then like her dealing with discrimination from not being English enough because she's half Japanese, and not being Japanese enough because she's half English. Reaper society as a whole seems to be very sociopathic, I think is the best way. Like, you don't show emotion, you don't fall in love, and as I said, she's a very, very good Reaper. She is a very sociopathic person. If your entire job is to like take human souls and deal with death all the time, it makes sense to be sociopathic, which is why throwing a love story in the middle of this was really, really weird. Like, it is very, very hard for me to buy the fact that this sociopath is now suddenly in love for no reason. I guess because it's a YA fantasy, the author thought it needed a love story, but it didn't. Overall, this is a very dark, dark story. So if you don't like dark topics, this probably isn't going to be for you. I will also give you content warnings on this one. For the one thing that seems to get everybody is pet death, as well as like the death of children. So if that bothers you, definitely don't read this, but all in all, this is a very dark story. I like, it's well paced, it's well written, and I can acknowledge that while still acknowledging that I didn't like it specifically for the romance aspect. So as far as writing would go, if I would base this just off of like the writer's ability, I would probably give this a 3-star, but I really disliked that romance aspect, so I'm gonna give it a 2-star. But it read fast, the writing's good, it just wasn't for me, but it might be for you, so don't let my negative rating like dissuade you from this book if it does sound like something you'd like to read. I'm back again with another double feature because I had another DNF. As I think I said, Princess of Souls was just one of the books that I was interested in reading for some reason. It looked interesting, so I was like, okay, I'm kind of excited to read this, I've got the time, let's pick this up. And I started reading it, and I just didn't like the story. But there was nothing wrong with it. I'm thinking, I'm just not enjoying this. But I couldn't figure out why. So I set it down, decided to pick up another book, and then as I've like set it down and stepped away from it, I realized these are the exact same story. Like the exact same plot line, but this is told so much better than this. So yeah, if you've read this, I suggest reading this one because this one's better. And if you haven't read this, then don't bother and just read this instead. But yeah, Violet Maid of Thorns and Princess of Souls, exact same story, exact same plot line. Violet Maid of Thorns is really better. I didn't need to read a worse version of the same story, so DNF on this one. From there, I picked up Truman Capote's In Cold Blood. This is the second thing I've read by Truman Capote. I've read Breakfast at Tiffany's. This is considered to be the first true crime novel. It is not the first true crime novel, but it was the first popular true crime novel, and still to this day, one of the best-selling true crime novels of all time. This follows a murder of the Cutter family in 1959 in Kansas, Holcomb, Kansas. It follows those events from introducing the reader to the Cutter family to begin with, and then going through their murder, what the murderers were doing, like in between the time up until they got caught and then through the trial until their deaths by hanging in Leavenworth. I don't think they were in Leavenworth penitentiary. But they were in Leavenworth County at like the state prison. As far as this goes, when I said true crime earlier, it is the actual events that happened, but it's been fictionalized to make it into a story instead of just like laying out the facts. Because there's absolutely no way that Truman Capote could have known what the murdered people or the killers were thinking at any given time. But he did take all of like the court records and everything like that and construct this story from factual events. As far as I can tell from reading the story and then like looking up like on the internet about the story, I'm not sure why he chose this case other than the fact that it was so unreasonably gruesome, because this was extremely straightforward. Unlike the true crime we see today that's kind of more unsolved mysteries, like it was very, very clear that these two men murdered this family in a botched robbery. Like, they confessed to the crimes, gave vivid details, like, there was no, like, there's no worry that these men were killed for a crime they didn't commit, even to this day. Like, they clearly committed the crime. I can tell you that Capote is a very good storyteller. He's a very good writer. This doesn't seem long, but the font's very tiny, and man, did he stretch out this story. Like, if you just want to get like to the bare tacks of what happened, you could cover it in like maybe 3 pages, but this is nearly 4 or like 350 pages, tiny font. It was a lot of unnecessary information. As far as, do I recommend this book to anybody? If you are interested in reading the original true crime or the most popular true crime, and you're interested in that or you're interested in this for that exact reason, you can go ahead and pick it up. If you want to know about like what happened with this court case, look it up on Wikipedia. It'll take you 5 minutes. If you're looking at this for any other reason, maybe you're just interested in true crime in general and want to read another true crime novel, I would skip this one. It was published in 1965, and it definitely has aspects of his time. There are a bunch of slurs. It's kind of gross to read. You're gonna see the N-word quite a few times, among many other things that I never needed to read in my life. So unless you're specifically looking to this as the grandfather of true crime or whatever we want to call it, I would just pick up something else. It's Saturday night. I can probably read something else, but I'm running out of things to read on this shelf. Let's see what we've got. Instead of taking you over there, I'm just gonna bring this to you. This is literally all that's left on this shelf. These right here are all well over 400 pages, so I think I'm just gonna try this one and then call it for the week once I'm done with this one. Maybe start next week early. But I don't think I have enough time to read any of these, nor do I have a strong desire to read any of these at this particular moment in time. All right, last book of the week. Before I get into this, the neighbors are doing some construction, so you might hear power tools, and the dog, as always, is sleeping underneath me. In England, you can find a small town right on the edge of the woods. The wood's called Mockbeggar, and just closer to the woods than the town is a house with a small church on it known as Small Angels. The wood is haunted, and the family that the church and the house belong to is cursed. Hundreds of years ago, a brother killed brother, and the family of the murderous brother is now responsible for paying daily tribute to the murdered brother, with the potential of dire consequence, right? So 10 years ago, something happened, and the wood has been quiet since then, but it's now waking up just in time for a young bride to be married at Small Angels. This story is being told by 4 different women. First you have Lucia, who's the youngest daughter of the Cursed family. Then you have Kate, a friend of Lucia and her sister, but something a little bit more to Lucia. And then you have Chloe, who is the bride. The final perspective is Lucia's grandmother, Selena. This has 2 timelines, so you have like the 10 years prior and then the events nowadays. Chloe's chapters are only in like the modern times, and then Selena's, because she's dead in modern times, is 10 years past. This is a ghost story, if you didn't catch that from like the haunted wood and everything like that, but it's a super slow ghost story. Like, it's slowly building up. It's not spooky particularly at any point. And there's like a sense of unease throughout the book, but no like rush. I didn't enjoy this at all. Typically I probably would have DNF'd it, but I've DNF'd so many books this week that I was like, you know what, I don't hate this, I can definitely get through it, but I would like read a chapter and then like put it down for an hour and get on TikTok or something. Like, it was so hard for me to concentrate on reading this book. One of the big mostly the story wasn't bad in any sense, it was just slow. The only thing that really bothered me was a lot of the times you get the same story repeated again from somebody else's perspective, and I always feel that's unnecessary in books. Like, you've told me what's happened, I don't need to hear what happens again, especially when the book starts approaching 400 pages, because you're telling the same story over and over again. I would definitely recommend this for somebody who likes unsettling stories and wants something slow and still. There's nothing fast paced, there's nothing shocking or twisted or anything like super scary in here. It's just a slow, haunting story. So if that's something you want, go ahead and read this. If it's not something you want, then skip it, don't read it. And that's it. 10 books, 8 if you get rid of the top 2 because they were DNFs, but 10 books off my shelf, 8 books entirely read this week. I'd consider that a successful and eventful reading week. Hopefully I have as much success next week, but I think this is probably going to peak out at my best reading week for this challenge, but we're going to continue on into next week, and I will see you in that video. Bye!